welcome back to What's Up Watchtower. Robin and Mike here.
That's right.
And we're getting a start on the year. Last year we didn't make that many videos, and this year, well, this is our first video of 2019. And hopefully we'll be able to do at least one a month, because there's a lot going on and we have a lot on our minds, or I should say Mike has a lot on his mind.
Yeah, what was it, 2016 when we first started? We made our first video?
Yeah, I think so.
Time flies. Mm-hmm. Well, as many of you guys who will know, I'm like a virtual Jehovah's Witness attending meetings. I watch the meetings online. So I was very interested in the most recent Watchtower that if you were at the meeting last week, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, if you studied for this Watchtower, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Who molds your thinking? And never mind the beat up iPad there. This one has been in my workshop and has seen a lot of better days. But this is from the November 2018 study article, a study issue of the Watchtower magazine. And this is something that I thought that this article highlighted a lot of the problems that I not only personally have with Jehovah's Witnesses, but things that I see as a problem.
I just want to clarify, I have not read this article, so I'm going on this. I'm letting him just direct the conversation because I haven't read it. I don't know that much about it. But
yeah, well, I have a feeling from the people that I've spoken with and from what I know, just with the people that I know, people who left the witnesses find it very difficult to sit through a Watchtower study. Mm-hmm. So there's a good chance that many of you guys aren't familiar with this, or you're familiar with it, trust me. If you've been around it, you're familiar with it. But either way, so no more dilly-dallying. The most important thing is the questions that are for the paragraphs, because they really lead the direction of how everything goes. And so I just want to start. I'm just going to kind of zip through this little lesson, and some of the things I'm just going to disregard and skip over. We could spend 3 hours talking about this if we wanted to. So the first question's in the can you answer box. Why is Jehovah's thinking beneficial for us? For us. And why is Jehovah's thinking superior to the ideas and values of the world? And the first thing I thought to myself is Jehovah's thinking. And you and I both know that what they mean is falling into line, basically, with the thinking of the organization.
Right.
So they say Jehovah's thinking, but if you've ever been to the Kingdom Hall, you clearly know that this is what they're talking about, falling in line with the organization. So I'm going to start in paragraph 3, because I think this is the beginning of many interesting points. Why is it challenging to reject the world's thinking in favor of Jehovah's? So I'm going to read just a snippet of this.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about it. So, but what about our thinking? Are we bringing our thoughts and viewpoints into alignment with Jehovah's? Doing so requires a deliberate effort. On the other hand, little or no effort is needed to absorb the world's thinking. Think about that though for a minute. I thought to myself, of course, because the world's thinking is logical, reasonable, reasoning, and Jehovah's thinking is mysterious, and there are no answers for certain questions. Trying to convince yourself that some of the things that we were taught as Jehovah's Witnesses are real, convincing yourself that those things are real is difficult.
Yes.
But when you see a scientific documentary that has information that describes why something is true, following that worldly logic is easy because it makes sense. So I think that's my biggest thing right here. And Why is it challenging to reject the world's thinking in favor of Jehovah's? Jehovah's doesn't make sense, and the world's does.
Well, it's just like when you listen to some of the way that they word things about beliefs that they used to have. Well, some used to think this and some used to think that, just like with the 1975 debacle. Some, were hoping that the end was going to come. Some, basically, but why? Why were they thinking that? Why did some think, like they've said in their History of Jehovah's Witnesses video that recently came out, some were believing that in 1914 they were going to be whisked away to heaven. Well, they believed that because that was the teaching. Just like, in, 30, 40 years, if Jehovah's Witnesses still exist and the overlapping generations just falls apart, they're going to say, well, some believed that there were, the overlapping. No, that's the teaching.
Right. Right.
That's the teaching.
And again, that always brings me back to the question, because so many Jehovah's Witnesses leave and new ones come in. So you have kind of a turnover of people who maybe haven't been there quite as long as others. But the people who have been there the longest, they've seen the changes. I mean, you and I have seen changes. So for people who are 20 and 30 years older than us, I know they've seen and recognized even greater changes than we've seen. And why is it that they can so easily dismiss those changes? And when we see it, we're like, wait a minute, there's a lot of big changes here. This doesn't make sense. But why? It's not a question I know the answer to. I don't know. It's just, why is it with some people they just refuse to?
Well, it's built into their religion. It's built into their ideology that the light gets brighter, that it's going to continue changing, that Jehovah apparently can't make his thinking clear and understandable and knowing what is actually true from the get-go. He has to lead people through darkness and let then slowly get the bright lighter so that they can understand things better. But who's to say that what they believe now is going to be completely wrong, just like what they believed 100 years ago was completely wrong.
Right. Yep. And then let's move on to the next subheading, please.
Okay. Brother Thompson, let's move on to the next paragraph.
I think it's interesting, though, just the subtitles. Just look at this. Just that. Jehovah's thinking is beneficial and desirable. And when you see it in black and white, if you look at it the way I see it, without the surrounding paragraphs, that looks like just propaganda. Just a propaganda sign. Jehovah's thinking is beneficial. It's propaganda. Jehovah's thinking is right. Jehovah's thinking is righteous. These type of words, I was going to count before we sat down and did this. I just didn't have time. I'm really curious because the number of times that type of phrase is mentioned in this article is crazy. I just listened to it on the JW podcast. I also podcast this stuff, so I listened to it on headphones before we did this. And it's an enormous number of time, and repeating words and phrases does have an effect. It's why so much of the Jehovah's Witness teachings, the talks, the Watchtower studies are so repetitious again and again and again and again. And that's part of what this is going to be talking about, how we can change our thinking to be molded by Jehovah instead of by the world. But what that's really allowing us is to have our thoughts changed by men. So
the thing is, when Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're watching this, or if you were a Jehovah's Witness, you're sitting in the meetings and you're listening to these phrases, this verbiage, over and over. and you don't even think about what it means. It's become so familiar that you don't sit and think about what is actually being said and breaking it down and asking yourself, are there logical fallacies being used here? And what am I not seeing that's being said? You take it, you think very straightforward of what is being said, but you're not questioning what is actually meant, and is it true? Does it, if you sit and break it down into its individual pieces, can it be proven what is being said? It's just like, I think it was the annual meeting from 2018. I was just listening to it, and Brother Let says that our spiritual paradise, and they give proof of a spiritual paradise, but it's actually, there's no proof of a spiritual paradise. But he says our spiritual paradise is proof that there's going to be a literal paradise. Now, Jehovah's Witnesses listening to that, it feels good, and I know that they're just like, yeah, it's proof. But there's no proof. That's just a nice saying that he said to make them feel better about everything they're giving up in their life.
This is a pet peeve of mine, how so many things in this world, so many people are giving credence for saying important things, and they're just empty words.
They're not saying anything.
They mean nothing. And so if you, like Robin was saying, if you really sit down and analyze, not even analyze, listen with your own understanding of the English language without anyone having to tell you what words mean, like generation, a word that we all know what it means. Listen with your own understanding of the words that they're saying, and they are being misleading in many, or covering bases. That's like, therefore we can assume, or
it stands to reason.
It stands to, those kind of statements lead into empty words, because it's all just opinion. It's all just trying to paint a picture that they're painting. They're painting that picture.
Yeah.
So anything that comes after a therefore, or so it can be assumed, or whatever, just throw it right in the garbage. Because if it was actual fact, the words therefore it can be assumed, or whatever, or we may be able to reason that you wouldn't need to say those things if it was an actual fact. So paragraph 6, I'm going to actually read this paragraph because I think this is an important one. Question A, what freedom does Jehovah allow us? And question B, is this freedom absolute? We can be assured, however, that bringing our thinking in harmony with Jehovah's does not mean giving up all individual thought or expression. As stated at 2 Corinthians 3:17, where the Spirit of Jehovah is, there is freedom. We are free to develop our own distinct personalities. We can have our own personal preferences and choose fields of interest. Indeed, Jehovah designed us to do so. However, we cannot use our freedom without restraint. When it comes to issues of right and wrong, Jehovah wants us to be guided by His thinking as revealed in His Word. Is this overly restrictive, or is it beneficial? So, what do you think about this part? We are free to develop our own distinct personalities. And have our own personal preferences.
We're free to develop our own. I'm sorry, but we're born with personalities.
I'm not even talking about that. I'm like, okay, so you've got your personality and you want to dress a certain way. Can't dress that way. Oh, well, you want to have a haircut that your personality. It's no, you can't have a haircut like that because it's too worldly. You can't. All of this is garbage because you have to fit into a mold to be accepted into the Jehovah's Witness organization. So this whole concept, and I can attest to this, and Robin can attest to this, anytime I started to do anything that was exercising my own personal freedom that affected no one else in the congregation, I was counseled about my hobbies, about how long my sideburns were, about how short my hair was, about how big my pants were, about how every stupid thing you could counsel somebody on, I was counseled on. It's ridiculous, but it's because if you even start to stray outside of the mold, you're called out on it. Why are you starting to stray? Who's influencing you? Oh. So I'm calling this complete paragraph bullcrap. Complete crap. They say freedom, no freedom. No. Garbage.
Your freedom is only free to look and act and behave and dress like everybody else. What they have deemed is what is acceptable. Very cookie cutter.
Well, you want to hear the first part of paragraph 7?
Sure.
Because this is something I want to touch on too. Why will cultivating Jehovah's view of matters not be overly restrictive? Illustrate. And by illustrate, they mean read the illustration that's given in the paragraph. So I will.
Okay.
Consider an illustration. Here's a clue to your answer. Parents endeavor to instill in their children good values. They may teach them to be honest, industrious, and considerate of others. This is not overly restrictive. Stop right there. This has nothing to do with being restrictive or non-restrictive. You're talking about just raising children and the basic things that any Christian would also agree with, teaching them to be honest, industrious, considerate of others. What does this have to do with your personal freedoms or not living outside of Jehovah's guidelines? Their illustrations are very often very bad. They're bad illustrations. So either way, the parents are preparing them for a successful life as independent adults, as opposed to being restrictive of them. That's their illustration. But when the children grow up and leave home, they will be free to make their own choices. If they choose to live with the values that they learn from the parents, they will be more likely to make decisions that they will not later regret. And again, bull crap. Bull crap. That is such a blanket statement to say that if you follow the guidelines your parents set forward to you, that you're less likely to have regrets later in your life. And I don't know how that blanket statement could even begin to describe the variety of situations that people who will read this are undergoing.
So I guess I'm missing the
They're
point.
basically saying that if you're a Jehovah's Witness parent and you're raising your kids as Jehovah's Witness kids, they're not going to regret it, which is the same mumbo jumbo we were taught as growing up too.
Well, then it goes into paragraph 8. Like a good parent, Jehovah wants children to have the most fulfilling life possible.
Yeah, I was getting to that too. Go ahead.
Okay, because the first part is just the preface to the second part. So it doesn't really matter unless you get to the second part.
Maybe I got ahead of myself because I already knew where I was going. Okay, sorry. So, do you want to...
He therefore provides basic principles for moral conduct and for behavior towards others. In such matters, he invites us to cultivate his very way of thinking and to share his values. Far from constraining us, this enhances, elevates, and expands our thinking ability. It helps us make choices that lead to happiness while still allowing us to blossom as individuals.
And again, I'm just calling BS on all of this because you're not allowed to blossom as an individual if you're following a set game plan and you're expected to end at a certain result.
How can you blossom as a human being if, like so many former Jehovah's Witnesses making videos, including ourselves, that we were smart, creative, talented, but none of those qualities were cultivated or encouraged to blossom outside of a very constrained framework. So many gave up scholarships for whether it was athletics, whether it was because, they had high GPAs, they had certain talents that they were offered scholarships for. So they were not able to blossom into their full potential as a human being because they were not allowed to pursue those avenues.
And that's the story of growing up Jehovah's Witness.
Yeah. And, I would just say, tonight we've just come from an improv show where I performed with one of the groups that I'm a part of. And I get so much joy making people laugh and being on stage. And I feel now I'm fully blossoming into my full potential as a human being, and that I'm connecting with people. And improv may not be changing people's life, but it's a beautiful thing, to be able to make people laugh and make them forget about their problems for a couple of hours. And this is an avenue I never would have been able to go into as a Jehovah's Witness. I never would have been able to go into performing arts. And when I was in high school, I was in drama classes and I loved performing. And I knew, and it was a source of much of my depression as a teenager, that I could not go into acting or anything like that once I graduated high school. That basically high school, that was it. That was all I was going to get.
The pinnacle of your life.
That was all I was going to, that was going to be the pinnacle of my life, of being able to perform. And, so I suffered a lot of depression for many years, feeling like I missed out on my life.
Well, and that leads right into this too, because paragraphs 9 and 10, and I'm not going to read these, it's just talking about how Jehovah's thinking is superior to that of the world. But an interesting sentence in here: much of the world's thinking is out of harmony with Jehovah's thinking. For example, self-promotion is often encouraged. This is something that they harp about a lot. And they don't want anyone to feel too good about themselves. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it.
That is the right way to describe it.
Because if you are recognized as being special or gifted or talented, it's this whole leveling out of the world, right? Like, and I don't mean like the world in that kind of a sense. I mean just of people. It's like, if you're too good at something, people who maybe aren't motivated to do anything feel bad about themselves because they don't do anything and you do things and they talk bad. I don't know. There's some kind of a mental mindset.
Well, they don't want you to feel good about yourself. They don't want you to feel good about your successes because they don't want you leaving and pursuing those successes.
Right. Listen, there's some kind of a mindset.
It's a way
that
of
they have. It tears.
You.
Yeah, right. But you do it. We do it to ourselves.
They want to keep you feeling so just terrible about yourself and unworthy, so that the only thing you have to look forward to is the new system. Right.
But that's something, I mean, we were never recognized for anything outside of the organization, and even then, not too much, because it's not supposed to be a big deal. It's supposed to be the thing you're already doing anyway. So it just seems, remember when it used to be like when I was like 15, 16, getting baptized, around that time period or a little before that maybe, I seem to remember people having like baptism parties and like people giving presents for baptism and stuff. And then the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society had like made some counsel about that.
And not to clap during the baptisms.
Yeah, about like, it's about not to make a big deal of it.
You're right.
And again, this is, if you're getting baptized as a young person, it's arguably the biggest, most foolish step you'll ever take in your life. But for something like that to not even be recognized, for when Robin graduated at the top of her class in college, and to have her parents there just be like, yeah, whatever, like it's no big deal. They don't have any concept of what it takes to achieve things in this world, because nobody ever tries to achieve things who's an active Jehovah's Witness, because they're all busy doing what they do. And to step out and to work double hard and to really, really want to achieve a goal, even if it's just a personal goal for yourself, without a job offer or without money or without school, or maybe you just want to make a really big painting or something where you're just by yourself doing it and nobody else has influence on it.
Futile pursuits.
Nothing is ever encouraged or considered exemplary or any kind of benefit unless it has to do with this, and even then just a little bit.
Yeah, because they believe that everything is going to be destroyed. So the world is passing away, and so is its desire. So anything that you would do in this world is completely futile. So why try? Why do it?
Yeah.
It's not going to bring you anything. It's an expression of your personality. It makes you happy. It brings joy to other people. You might discover something that could be of benefit to humanity.
Well, I just think to any Jehovah's Witnesses, even the governing body members, elders, anybody who's watching this, whoever sees this, what do you do in your spare time? Do you like music? Do you like any TV shows or movies?
Futile.
Yeah. If everyone in the world had your viewpoint of how we should be spending our time, there would be nothing. There would be no books. There would be no great masterpieces of film and art. There would be nothing. There would be no plays to go see. There would be no internet to surf on. There would be no games invented to play, because everyone would just be worshiping Jehovah. So think about that. I don't want that world.
That's a colorless, dark, depressing world.
Yeah, but it's what they say. But when, again, like we talked about earlier, think about the words that you are reading and you are hearing. Because when you follow it to its logical end, that's what you end up with. A world of nothing.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Paragraph 11 talks about whose thinking guided Moses. Well, do some actual research about the history of the Bible, because many scholars don't believe Moses was even a real person. So let's scrap that one. Let's go paragraph 14. Avoid being molded by this system of things. And we're coming to the end here. In order to think like Jehovah, on what must we meditate?
Meditate. That's an interesting word for you. They don't even know the meaning of the word.
We can talk about that too. So I'm gonna read part of this quoted scripture, and of course, just as a note, I think using tablets and things is it's so strategic for the witnesses, because I remember when I was young, we didn't have tablets, we had our Bibles. And so you would have a Bible reading at the Kingdom Hall. And you're following along in your Bible, and then they're talking about something else, and then you just keep reading in your Bible, you read a couple of chapters. You end up getting context before and after, and you end up, sometimes I learned things that I didn't know. I was like, oh, so this is where that story is. This is actually the beginning of a story I'm familiar with, but I wasn't familiar with how this was connected to that. Like those kind of things you learn just by reading the Bible by itself. Straight through, page after page, not skipping around, read it in order. And without having access to doing that, where only the single scriptures are highlighted or snippets of single scriptures are highlighted, they're really hiding and I say it's hiding in plain sight, the context of these articles. So they could take literally any snippet of a scripture, apply it to a certain paragraph, and that scripture may not even be talking about what they're applying it to, but how would you know? Mm-hmm. How would you know?
Right.
So stop being molded by this system of things, but be transformed by making your mind over, so that you may prove to yourselves the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. We've heard that a million times, right? True, our thinking has to some extent been influenced by hereditary factors and past experiences, but the mind is flexible and can keep changing. To a large extent, any such changes will be determined by what we allow into our mind and what we choose to dwell on. By dwelling or meditating on Jehovah's way of thinking, we can prove to ourselves that his viewpoints are right. Stop right there.
That's a logical fallacy.
Listen to this sentence.
Right there.
Just this sentence. By dwelling or meditating on Jehovah's way of thinking, we can prove to ourselves that his viewpoints are right. Notice it doesn't say that there's proof for his viewpoints. It's saying you can prove to yourself. In other words, you can convince yourself that this is right. And that is what this repetition is all about.
It's convincing yourself.
You can convince yourself that this is right. And you want to convince yourself even more? Go to a building with a bunch of other people who are also trying to convince themselves of the same thing, and you work on convincing each other, and at the end of the day, everybody's happy because they all believe the same thing.
Confirmation bias.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yep, you can convince yourself of a lot of things.
Says, in the follow-up sentence to that, it will then be our natural desire to bring our thoughts into alignment with his.
It will be our natural.
It will then be our natural desire. So wait. Listen to the actual words that are written here. It will then be our natural desire. No. If it has changed from what it was originally, which was your natural desire, it has now got to be something different. It has to be something different by definition of the words. So listen, I hope people don't think I'm like trying to dig too deep into this, but these are the words that are written on the page. Never mind.
It's mind control propaganda. It's confirmation bias. It's telling you that it's going to become natural for you to think this way because you're continuing to read it over and over and over and over again.
Keep that thought. I'm going to read the first part of the next paragraph because it's right what you're saying now. Note, however, that in order to make our mind over to Jehovah's way of thinking, we need to stop being molded by this system. We must stop taking into our minds ideas or viewpoints that are in opposition to God's. So confirmation bias, again, not only are you to surround yourself with people who think exactly the way that you do so you can confirm your belief systems so nobody comes into question. It goes, but we must stop taking into our minds ideas or viewpoints that are in opposition to God's. And that right there is another way of confirmation bias, to not look at anything that doesn't already agree with what you believe. And if you're living that way, I'm sorry, but you're living in falsehood because you are unable to see both sides of an argument, and if you are really, really hunkered down in one school of thought without knowing anything about anything else, you're really lost. You're really lost at sea because you don't have the complete picture. And think of where you're getting your information.
I just have to say, reading this sentence, we must stop taking into our minds ideas or viewpoints that are in opposition to God's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can prove virtually any belief system you have with the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You can find scriptures to back up whatever you believe about what he loves, what he hates. Is he jealous? Is he angry? Is he, did he commit genocide with thousands and hundreds of thousands of people in the Bible that he hated? Did he hate black people? Did he hate, all these racism and biases and terrible things people have done throughout history, they've used the Bible to confirm whatever they believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's just a weird, stop taking into our minds ideas that are opposition to God. Well, people can believe whatever they want and find scriptures to back up what they believe.
Okay, so in this article, we're really, really, really concerned about what God thinks about things. What's God's viewpoints and opinions on things, right? So, do you know any Jehovah's Witnesses that eat shellfish, shrimp, lobster, anything like that? Now,
they're an abomination.
And, well, what about people who wear garments that are of mixed fabrics?
Abomination.
Oh man, that's right. Well, you say to yourself, well, Jesus did away with the law. No. You don't get to go that far backward because in the Old Testament, God is telling you what he likes. These are his opinions. And now just because Jesus comes along, do you think God loves people to eat shellfish now? No, his ways are unchanging and forever. God still hates that you eat shellfish, and yet you do it anyway. Why? How dare you, Jehovah's Witnesses, eat shellfish, wear multi-fabric clothing? Jehovah hates these things. Do you think just because Jesus came to earth, he quit hating those things? This is about Jehovah's opinions. The Bible is so full of God's conflicting opinions, I defy any human to follow those standards because they're conflicting.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes me crazy because this is the illogical way that we're taught. And once you finally see the holes in the argument, no one has an answer for you. Jehovah's Witnesses don't want to talk to me about this stuff. They don't want to talk to us about this. We're just apostates. I have legitimate questions that I know for a fact you're incapable of answering because they're questions that nobody can answer. And yet you're telling me you have an answer for these questions and that I'm wrong. So it's this type of arrogance and this type of assumption that the Jehovah's Witnesses know what God wants so clearly. They know so clearly what he wants from the Bible that their views are different than almost any other Bible-based religion. It's like, this doesn't make sense. I'm not following. Crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, and we're coming to the very end here. From what do we need to protect ourselves? We can't avoid all contact with the world's thinking. That's what it says. The preaching work itself will bring us in contact with erroneous beliefs. That might be the truest sentence I've ever read in Jehovah's Witness publication. The preaching work itself will bring you in contact with erroneous beliefs.
Erroneous. Erroneous.
Erroneous. Very good. I made an erroneous mistake on that paragraph. So, think about it. That's funny though, right? The preaching work itself will bring us in contact with erroneous beliefs. That's true. The preaching work will bring you in contact with erroneous beliefs, the ones that you are preaching.
Yeah. That's
what I'm talking about.
Your own beliefs are the erroneous beliefs.
Yes. So, where contact with ungodly views is unavoidable, we certainly need not entertain them or accept them.
Right. This is what is so odd about Jehovah's Witnesses, that they will push their literature on you, but they would never accept, we could never accept a pamphlet or tract from another church. Oh, if someone tries to say, hey, I want to give you something from my church too. Oh, no.
We couldn't even stand there if somebody said, will you pray with me? Mm-mm. Or can I pray with you?
Yeah. No.
No way. Your spooky wooky God freaks me out. You know, like, if it's not Jehovah, we're done with that business. It's
how horrible is that? That makes me just sick to my stomach now when I think about that. Mm-hmm. About how we treated other people's beliefs.
Well, the Bible warns us in paragraph 17 that if we keep close company with people who do not worship Jehovah, their thinking will rub off on us. So this is something that I've always thought was very interesting, because I've heard it from people that I know. You've heard it from people you know. If you ever have an idea or a question, who have you been listening to get that idea? I know you didn't come up with that idea. Who are you listening to? Apostates? Where did you see that? Where did you hear that? How many times have you
been reading?
How many times have you heard that in the secretly recorded judicial committees and elders meetings?
Yep.
What have you been reading? Have you been reading apostate stuff? Well, any thought that's outside of the norm for Jehovah's Witness could be considered apostate thinking. And it's like they have no concept that a person could finally wake up, stop believing all the BS, start to see through some of these lies, and make a decision on their own without being influenced by someone else. And they just can't believe it.
Right.
They can't believe it.
So why doesn't it work the other way around? Why doesn't, if Jehovah's Witnesses have the truth, and if they're constantly around coworkers and talking about their beliefs and whatever, why isn't their good rubbing off on people, but people's bad is always going to rub off on you? You know? But wait a second. In their church, what Jehovah's Witnesses are teaching is a lie. Don't let their thinking rub off on you and destroy your relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, with Jesus. That's what I was going to say. Yeah. Yeah.
It goes both ways.
It does. It's religion. Okay. We are... I keep saying we're almost at the end, but this just keeps going. See, that's why a paper magazine is better. I fold it. Oh, 2 more paragraphs. 2 more paragraphs. No, okay. Why must we be on guard against worldly viewpoints that are promoted in subtle ways, and what questions should we ask ourselves, and why? This is interesting because it talks here about a human interest story might advance the world's view of human goals and achievements. Some movies and books promote the me first and family first philosophies, making them seem reasonable, appealing, even right. Such viewpoints overlook the scriptural view that our families and self-worth thrive when we love Jehovah above all. And
really?
So, yeah, well, I know that the Jehovah's Witnesses don't promote the family first philosophy.
Oh, no. Oh, no.
Every man for himself.
Yeah.
So, you know, we all know how much fear is laid out there to not be affected by the books. Don't let your kids see Harry Potter, and you know, it's an actual fear, a paranoia. I just watched not a documentary, like a talk that a dude gave. It was about the satanic panic of the 1980s. And it just reminds me of, you know, in the 1980s, and it's still even today, there was so much fear about Satanism. But the Jehovah's Witnesses are still running off this same fear of Satan himself. Satan. Be afraid of Satan, what Satan can do. Satan's going to influence you. Satan's going to stumble you. Satan's going to put traps in your way. I think that's interesting. That whole belief system that witnesses have. A lot of really evangelical Christians have. So, who is molding you now? And this is actually a question that I was thinking of when I started with this, because I was thinking, well, if every person is molded in some way that is basically, you can't get away from it. You're molded in some way, somehow, by your world around you and the people you meet and see. So who's molding the thinking of the governing body members? Who molds their thinking? Obviously, they would have relationships with each other, so they would affect each other's thinking. But where's the top of that? Where's the pinnacle of that thinking? Who affects their thinking? Is it Jehovah God himself? If he affects their thinking, how does he do it? We've talked about this before. How does this information transfer from a spirit realm to a human man?
If he's molding their thinking, why did he mold their thinking into saying millions now living will never die, and that this generation of 1914 would not pass away? That was in the masthead, whatever, the inside cover of the Watchtower for decades. That was the point of the magazine, to declare, you know, the good news of the kingdom, and that the generation of 1914 would see the end of this system of things. So it's not there anymore. They took that out. So yeah, who's molding their thinking? Who's molding their thinking when it comes to decisions of that sent hundreds, if not thousands, of brothers to prison when they refused secular service? When it came to, like, the Vietnam War, instead of being able to do, you know, work in cleaning hospitals or whatever, something that would have been, according to their conscience, they could do, but the governing body said absolutely not. If they did, what's it called, secular? I don't know, that's not the word.
Oh, it's some kind of service.
Alternative service, yeah. Instead of, you know, fighting in the war. No, you can't even do this, because that would be, that would not be displaying your Christian neutrality. So thousands of young men went to prison. Well, that thinking got changed, and they went for prison for nothing. They went to prison for nothing, because now the viewpoint was adjusted and they could do this alternative service. So who was molding their thinking then? Who was molding the governing body's thinking when they allowed thousands of people to die in Malawi? Rwanda? For not paying 50 cents for a card, when there was only one political party, and it was basically like an ID card. No, you can't do this, because if you do, you're going to be disfellowshipped. You'll be no longer one of Jehovah's Witnesses if you do this. But yet, who was molding their thinking when they said it was okay for the brothers in Mexico to bribe officials for the same kind of card?
Yeah. I think to myself, just in our, like, later than that, like, in the 80s, there was a lot of Jehovah's Witness. I mean, like, I remember this from the pictures in the magazines, slamming telemarketers. Televangelists. And just slamming them that they're using television and this and that. Like, we would never do this kind of stuff. Well, who's changed or manipulated your thinking so that now your standards are different? Because we know God's standards don't change. And why did God find it unacceptable 30 years ago, but now it's the most advertised thing on any video Jehovah's Witnesses make is jw.org. The other thing that I think is super interesting is that as we I'm losing my train of thought. Go. I know you're saying.
Well, I was thinking, who was molding their thinking when they said that blood fractions were not okay? Thousands of people died from not taking blood fractions, and now it's a conscience matter.
Well, I remember what I was going to say. I listened to another talk by the same guy that did the Satanic Panic hour-long discussion about how modern Christianity has been slowly changing over time to be more acceptable to the masses. And I say this all the time, I listen to a lot of religious radio. Like, if I'm in the car, I'm probably listening to some Moody Radio or some crap like that. It's some Bible, it's always Bible discourses and sermons and blah, blah, blah. The funny thing to me is that the more familiar I get with mainstream Christian thinking, mainstream Christian radio, Christian music, Christian philosophy, the more I see the Jehovah's Witnesses coming on over to meet mainstream Christianity. And I see this in the type of discourses that are given, the type of topics that are talked about. And I've mentioned this before, but it seems as if there's some kind of a general Bible schedule out there because the witnesses are following it and the people I listen to on the radio are following it and these other churches that do broadcasts. It's like everybody's talking about the same things all the time. The same topics. I swear, I heard a minister on the radio give a sermon, and then I heard a public talk the following week and it could just be coincidence. There's only so many religion things you can talk about, but it's the same topic. So I'm seeing similarities in the way that the witnesses are. In some ways, they're more extreme, but to the mainstream, they're appearing to be more watered down to kind of blend in with more Christianity, which is why you got Christian rock now. Christian music. We never had Christian rock, Jehovah's Christian rock, as when we were growing up. It would have been unthinkable. And now...
That's something I truly can't wrap my brain around.
The cartoons for children. So what are we doing now? Are we, making cartoons just to keep kids busy so parents can do other stuff? Or B, are we trying to indoctrinate children even more so we can keep that number? I mean, it's both actually probably. But that is something that would have never been done before. Why would it have been done? Because the Jehovah's Witnesses always prided themselves on teaching the children the same thing that they teach the adults. There was no children's stuff. And I'm not saying that that's right. I'm just saying that's how it was. And so if this is God's system and this is God's organization and this is the way he wants it, all of his people, regardless of age, to learn the same material at the same time, why are they now watering things down to have little baby Jesus cartoons? It's changing. And it is evolving because it has to stay alive. And it's blending more with the world around it. And that is the major hypocrisy about articles like the ones we just talked about. Because the Jehovah's Witness organization is itself becoming more worldly in order to keep members. And I mean, I can't be the only one who sees it.
Yeah. It's true.
I mean, if you looked at the witnesses from when we were kids to now, it's truly not the same religion. There are certain constructs that are the same, but the religion that we were a part of woulda, should've ended with Armageddon some time ago. So whatever's happening now, this like extension of life that this cult has, is struggling to survive, and it is sending out tentacles in every direction for some sign of life.
They're trying to see what'll stick.
And whatever works is what they're gonna do. So,
So Jehovah's Witnesses, who is molding your thinking?
Unfortunately, many of the ones who are in, they're molding their own thinking. They're caught in a loop.
It's jw.org that's molding your thinking. And
well, just remember too, what it was Russell who said, if you stopped reading the Watchtower or these Bible publications within 2 years, you would revert back to the way of the pagans, just only following what the Bible says. And
yeah, you would revert to Christendom.
To Christendom, yeah, not pagans.
And I was just gonna say that really and truly what woke me up was reading the Bible. Reading the Bible itself and thinking deeply about what I was reading and if it truly made sense. And I would check insight on the scriptures and other the Watchtower bound volumes, and we had the CD-ROM, and I would do research, but there were just certain questions there was no answer for, and it was doing that deep research that finally started unlocking the wheel, started the wheels going and unlocking the enmeshment into believing lies. And I've said this before in our videos, I never looked at any apostate literature or websites or anything until years after I left. Years. And it basically, by doing that, I got answers everything started to make sense.
And isn't it interesting that, and this is my feeling about it, I don't know if you have the same feeling, but after you stop kind of going to the meetings a little bit, in my case, when people are like, well, are you, what are your thoughts? Are you reading something or whatever? I haven't done any of that. But you're making me think I want to now.
Yeah.
Because why? What's there? I wasn't going to look at that. I never thought to look at that. Why? Why are you saying that? Are you seeing similarities in the way I feel and what the apostates? Well, I might need to see what these apostates are thinking then, because if they have any kind of legitimate feelings like I feel, then maybe I'm an apostate, And the witnesses put the ideas into your head.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And they'll say, apostates, they just have an agenda. Just because they might be angry doesn't mean they're lying. But I don't think that jw.org, the governing body, really want you reading the Bible. I don't think they really want you doing deep Bible research. That's outside of what they've published, because there's just like so much interesting research that Bible scholars have done that is deep research and interesting and based on history, archaeology, and it's not always going to be, it's going to contradict sometimes.
Speaking of that, I just listened to a new lecture by Bart Ehrman just this week while I was working. Mm-hmm. The thing that I have learned by listening to scholars and stuff is that they don't know all of the answers about the Bible. There are questions about who wrote what and when. And if things have been, obviously things have been altered. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, so many scholars will agree, well, we think this was written approximately here, but we're not sure about the author. Because of the way it's written, it's possible it could have been such and such, or a group of people from such and such time. No. The witnesses have hard and fast information. Oh, we know the answers. Mark, that was written by Mark. John, written by John. Yeah. Matthew, written by Matthew. This kind of oversimplistic thinking about the origins of the Bible are wrong, because the Bible is way more complex than they will give it credit for. Mm-hmm. Been written by way more people than they have given credit to for writing the books. The time periods are all off. There's so many problems.
Written earlier and later than they thought.
After the fact. So much stuff written after the fact and called prophecy.
Based on other mythologies, plagiarized from other mythologies.
Yeah, to the point that once you start doing research into the Bible itself, and here's the thing, if you want to research the Bible, you can't just research the Bible, because then you have to start comparing it with other ancient holy books. Because just to say, I looked at the Bible, great, where's your control group? Where's the study? Like, once you start seeing things from the Epic of Gilgamesh and Hammurabi's Code and these other ancient texts, and start seeing similarities in every one of them, you start to see the Bible as just another book written in a long line of BS books. And, interesting books, great literature, literally great books, but, not the Word of God, and can't prove that it is.
And the interesting thing to me about, Bible scholars is that they don't have an agenda. They just want to know truth. So they're looking at things from a different point of view than Jehovah's Witnesses, where they're trying to prove what they believe by taking this part of this scripture and this part of that, but let's leave that part out because it contradicts what we believe. And they look at it more holistically and based on, history and what was happening politically and everything else. There's
one of the guys, I watch a lot of debates and videos online, and there's a show called The Atheist Experience, which is like a weekly call-in show. And one of the hosts is a guy named Matt Dillahunty, and he's been on John Cedar's channel before. He's got a ton of videos. He's really good about epistemology, he's just such a smart guy, and he's very clever about determining where an argument falls short. Mm-hmm. And I've actually learned a lot about that kind of stuff from listening to him. But where the witnesses begin, they begin with faith. They begin with faith that these things are true. But something that Matt Dillahunty says all the time, and it's so true, is this: what can you not believe based on faith? Can't you believe anything based on faith?
That's true.
So if you can believe something that's true based on faith, and you can believe something that's not true based on faith, faith is obviously not an accurate way to find truth. It's not. So,
right.
So in order to find truth, if that's what you really want, faith isn't the answer, because faith doesn't get you there. Because the people who believe opposite of what some of the Muslims who have been extremists that we've seen on TV and stuff, they believe their faith so strongly that they were willing to commit suicide. So what can't you believe based on faith? And saying that I have faith that God's word, the Bible, is true. Well, I have faith that, the book I'm going to write tomorrow is blessed by God and it's going to be true. There's no real reason to believe anything based on faith. You need evidence. So, that's just something that was a big change in my life, learning about that kind of stuff.
Right.
And that's where we all, it's a big loop back to who controls your mind, who are your thoughts being molded by. Hopefully my thoughts are being molded by people who speak truth, and I research what I listen to and what I hear. And you could say, yes, that's confirmation bias. Well, I research from a lot of different sources, though. Even sources that are conflicting, even because I listen to religious radio. I don't believe in God. I'm listening to both sides. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's just really interesting to me. That Watchtower study was interesting.
I would just, I know that there are current Jehovah's Witnesses that stumble upon our channel. And, I have people reach out to me weekly that are maybe us and some, or the first channel that they listen to. And some people are critical, and some people are just starting to wake up. And our intention is for people to seek truth, and not to, if you're a current Jehovah's Witness, your indoctrination is to believe every word that comes out of the governing body's mouth as being truth. And my encouragement is always just to question it, break down what they're saying, and see if you can prove that what they're saying is true. And it really falls short, and it might make you feel good, some of the things that they say, but it's not provable what they're saying. And in fact, a lot of things that they say are actually, you're able to prove that it's not true. So we just want people to do their own research.
Yeah, and learning more about critical thinking, how to tell if an argument is false. There are ways to prove that an argument is false. It's not just my word versus your word, or my opinion versus your opinion. No, things can be proven right or wrong. Learning how to know what's what in that field is so helpful to determining what beliefs are true or most likely true. There's ways to figure this stuff out. There's mathematical formulas to figure out if things are true or not. And if you want to go down that rabbit hole, that's a tough one. But it's out there. So it's not just like, I think it's true, I hope it's true. There are ways to definitively find truth. And that's all I want to. Because I'm not coming at this with any kind of preconception of a God or a direction or anything.
And I just want to reiterate, because we have been making now for almost 3 years videos, that our purpose from the beginning was to encourage people to do their own research. Sorry if I'm boring you.
No, sorry, I'm tired. It's really late at night.
It is late. We know how hard it was when we woke up. I know for myself how it wasn't as hard for him. He didn't go through the sort of dark night of the soul that I think I went through.
I have a smaller soul than she does.
Of realizing, oh, everything I believed was a lie. And that was so hard to come to terms with. And I know, I'm going to speak for me, I know how scary that is, and that it's confusing, and that we're brought up with so much fear of the outside world. We were brought up with so much fear of apostates and of deviating from the teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses. So I know how hard that is. And just for people to know that you're not alone, and that it will get better. Right now it may seem really hard, and it is, but the further down the road that you get, whether that means losing your family, losing your friends, losing your entire social structure, that may happen. And that is very scary, but it will get better. And just to know that if you've begun this journey, not to be afraid. Just be courageous. Be brave.
And trust your gut. I think something that I have learned, it took a long time, is that when something, you have a feeling, and it might be the feeling of walking into the Kingdom Hall, you know, or the feeling of like that talk or whatever. Something, it's not that something doesn't sit right, it's almost indescribable. There's something inside you that's not right, that feels not right. Is it bothering your conscience? I don't know what it is. It's a thing. But when you start going to the Kingdom Hall and there's something that's not right, don't ignore that. And I don't know what that thing is going to be for you. But when something doesn't feel right, we don't often have an immediate clue as to what the problem is. And this is something that could persist for weeks or months or years. So if you're in that situation, it's going to really require some self-reflection. Why do I feel this way when I'm at the Kingdom Hall?
And don't think that it's just that it's your imperfection. Don't think that it's, that you've been influenced by the world. There's a reason you're feeling this way.
And you're not alone in the Kingdom Hall either. I'm sure many people feel the same way, and it's fear that stops a lot of people from asking more questions. They don't want to stand out as a person who's asking questions, or a person who's maybe not following the program 100%. So, but just trust your gut, trust your instincts, because I can tell you, Robin and I both had strong instincts about the Jehovah's Witnesses long before we left. When the initial reports came out about the child sex abuse cases in the 90s, that should have been the time I left then. It should have, and I really wish that it was. If I could go back in time, I would have done that.
When that was? And the reason why that story never gained enough traction is because that story came out the week before 9/11.
Okay.
How can you compete with 9/11?
No. So that's the kind of a thing though. Like, that story came out. It really bothered my conscience. Because I felt like, oh God, the Jehovah's Witnesses are just like the Catholics, doing the same stuff. And
I may be wrong about a week before, but it was within a few weeks of 9/11.
Yeah, either way, I was just saying that I let myself forget about the weirdness that I felt about it, and I just pushed it away. Mm-hmm. And then another decade goes by, or whatever, you know, before you do anything, before something else makes you go, oh, I feel really weird again. I've had this feeling before, you know.
It wasn't that long for me.
Yeah, I'm exaggerating. You know what I'm saying, though. Like, time, you can successfully stop yourself from waking up. Mm-hmm. You're taught how to do it as a Jehovah's Witness. You're taught to stop thoughts. Mm-hmm. You're taught to stop thinking about that and pray and call the elders for help. And once they know about it, ooh, now you can't do anything wrong because now you can get in trouble. It's like, it's you're setting safety nets in place for you not to leave the organization. But that's not what needs to happen. The opposite needs to happen. If you want the truth. If you don't want truth, more power to you. Just don't knock on my door. Oh, actually, come knock on my door. I want to talk to some of you guys.
They don't usually stop at our door anymore.
They avoid our door now. They avoid our door.
Because they were... It must be written on the territory.
Yeah. But you know, the funny thing is, they don't... It's all new people in the hall. I don't know any of them.
I need to get you to bed.
I know, it's like after midnight. It's late. It's not really late. It's not like 9 o'clock late. It's like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning late. So...
Anyways, we just wanted to make a video today, or is it official? Yeah, well, yesterday was Groundhog's Day, and I said being a Jehovah's Witness was like living Groundhog's Day because it's the same thing over and over and over again. Actually,
that movie has a great lesson for Jehovah's Witnesses. If you've never seen that movie with Bill Murray, boy, he what did he do? He kept living this... I'm asking a rhetorical question. He kept living the same day, but eventually he learned he could make himself better. Bit by bit by bit. Incrementally, he started learning from his mistakes, and he became an amazing person. A better person.
Okay.
You know, so incrementally, as Jehovah's Witnesses, one little incremental change to a better you, to a happier you. And if that means skipping the Sunday meeting to watch the Super Bowl this weekend, then do it. You know, have a great Sunday. You deserve a whole day to yourself. You know, just take care of yourselves, people.
Yeah.
You know, life is too short. Take care of yourselves. Try and be happy. Enjoy your friends and family, the people that you love, because who knows?
All right. Well, that was our rant. I'm letting Mike do the research nowadays, and he comes to me with a lot of stuff. And usually we don't have time to make a video, but we're gonna do our best this year to make more videos, because last year we didn't make hardly any.
Yeah, we have some topics already kind of set aside that we could talk about if we have time.
Yeah.
Some funny stuff.
That's it, you know, hey, some of you seem to enjoy what we have to say, so hey, we're gonna do our best. And you know, just knowing that you're not alone is what helps a lot of people, and why a lot of people will watch our videos, is because they're going through it and they know that we understand.
Yeah.
So, well, that's it. It's time for bed. So we're gonna say goodnight, and hope you all have a great rest of your weekend. I don't know when I'll get this up, but either way, until next time,
See you later.
I'll see you later.